What up, everybody? Welcome to Friday. And it's Coffee Hour Friday. Welcome. Thanks for joining me today here on Coffee Hour. It is the end of the week. You made it. You made it all the way to the end of the week. You're getting ready for the weekend. I tell you what, they do go by quickly. Except when you're probably up in the lift all week. Then it goes by slowly, I'm sure. But hey, thanks for taking time out of your day to join me here for Coffee Hour to get your day started off. We do this every Monday through Friday. And only time we ever miss it is if I've got something I have to be somewhere or whatever and I can't do the morning show. But then you'll know because it'll tell you that. It'll be a replay or whatnot. But other than that, it is live. Thanks for joining us here. We are just getting the week wrapped up. And you've got one more day to do it. And I'm going to make sure I turn off this phone so I don't get bombarded with calls and anything while we're doing the show. So if you're new to the show, my name is Paul Abernathy. I'm CEO and president of Electrical Code Academy Incorporated. And I do this show every week in order to get your day started, hopefully in a positive way, and let you think about the National Electrical Code, electrical in general, help increase your knowledge, answer questions you may have, get a little bit of insight in your world and what you got going on. And so, as always, I like to say I live vicariously through everybody that joins us. So if you do me a favor, if you will let me know who you are and in the comments and let me know whether or not you're a first-time viewer. This is the first time you've ever been to Coffee Hour, what you got going on, where you're from, all those type of things. We love to hear it here at Coffee Hour. Just do it right there. And also, we have some big giveaways coming on March 31st. So to get in on that giveaway, and we'll start it over again and do another giveaway because we're always going to be giving stuff away. You want to make sure that you do hashtag win in the chat, whatever platform you're on. Okay. All right. Couple announcements this morning that I want to make out is as you notice, we stopped streaming to Rumble and we stopped streaming to Instagram. One, because it's just way too much trouble for me to set up in the mornings, and it's not worth it. The following on those platforms is not that large, and I'm not about building subscribers, although I appreciate the subscriptions, and that's what helps drive me to be able to do some of these things. I'm just not a big pusher for that kind of stuff, so I'm not like making an effort to grow an Instagram account or a Rumble account. It just was avenues to give you more avenues to watch. That was all. And maybe you have a platform that you like better than others. Okay. Some people might like watching on Rumble. Some might watch on Instagram. But I am not really big on those vertical platforms like the TikToks and the Instagram. I know it's easier for the phone. I'm just not a big fan of those. I will say, with that said, I am doing behind the scenes on TikTok. So it's always going to be Master the NEC on all of my social platforms, except for LinkedIn. And that's going to be my full name, Paul Abernathy. But just a shout out to those over on TikTok who happen to be watching behind the scenes. They actually were those that got to watch me drop the power coin in my coffee yesterday. I can promise you that will not happen today. Okay. Because I'll be honest with you, I cleaned that coin, cleaned everything, cleaned it, put it in a new case, and it's already been shipped off to somebody that purchased it. So it happened that quickly. So anyway, in fact, I'm got to make new coins today, some point today, or this weekend, or something. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Let's do our normals. Let's go do some shout outs in the crowd. Oh, by the way, today, we are just finishing up. We're going to be we're finishing up everything that has to do with the standard method. So if you joined us at the beginning of the week, and you can catch these on replay, that's another announcement I have to make. I keep forgetting about these announcements. I should write these down. But we did everything standard method. Okay. So this week we did a 12-unit complex standard for the service. We did a 6-unit complex for the service sizing. Today, we're going to be doing the feeders that would go out to each unit. Remember, these are identical units, so keeping it simple, stupid. And so we're going to show you how you would do the standard method to the individual unit. Okay, so we're going to show you that today. Again, follows the same concept you're going to use the same form that you did for the single family dwelling that we did. So it doesn't really change, but we're going to show you that today and make it a kind of a light day. And as a bonus today, I do have a Let's Ask Paul question of the day that is multiple parts. And so I figured we would answer that one today. And it's an example where you can actually send questions to me at paulabernathy.com. Do not send them via regular email. I might not get them, okay? Because again, it's all filtered. You have to go to paulabernathy.com. If you want to interact with me and ask me code questions, you must use paulabernathy.com. It may be inconvenient for you, but it's better for me. So, and again, today, or when it comes to answering code questions, I'm going to do what's all about Paul, not about you, okay? So I need to make it easy for me. So that's the best way to do it, is if you send me an email, I might not answer your email. Okay, so just keep that in mind. In fact, it might not even make it to me because it's not in the format that we need to have it submitted. Let's see. Let's do some. The announcement. Any of you that catch these coffee hours and you know that the replays play at 5 o'clock and that type of thing. What's been proposed is that we're in the process, and people are going to hate this, but we're moving everything, as I've been talking about for over a year now. We're moving everything from our YouTube channels and our other channels, and even Facebook is purging videos after like 30 days or something like that. They're getting rid of videos. It's just the way their memory, the storage, that type of thing. So we're doing essentially the same thing. We're going to be moving all of our videos, even the coffee hour, is going to be moving over to the Fast Tracks Tube platform. And it's under the series. You'll see that there's a series tab, and it's already there for those that are members. Under that series, there's a coffee hour, and that's where you're going to have all of our coffee hours there. And the reason for that is because we want to start going through these and making the titles and descriptions more specific so that you actually know what's in the episode. It's not like that now over on YouTube, and I don't feel like making the effort to do that on a free platform where we're not making anything, and we're not about the clicks. We'd rather do it on our paid platform. Make it a little easier for you to maneuver and all that. That's why you would pay a subscription, that type of thing. So it's purely a business move. I give away a lot of free stuff, but at the end of the day, and free education and training and all. But we want to move those videos and those segments over to Fast Tracks Tube. So you're going to see that slowly migrating in the future. So it's not that way now. If you want to go watch a bunch of our replays and watch a bunch of our coffee hours and catch up on that, by all means, do so. But in the future, things are going to be moving to Fast Tracks Tube. That's our proprietary platform. That's just how we have to do it. Okay. All right. So let's do some morning shout outs here this morning. Craig, good morning from Nashville. Thanks for joining me. Adam, good morning. Definitely just woke up. Me too. And I don't have very much coffee here today, so I'm sure I can make it through it though. Adam does the, check it out. Look at the shirt he's wearing. Code Nerd in his picture. Adam, there you go. You can get those on our website, by the way. Shameless plug for the website, fasttracksystem.com. Go into the shop and you can find those there. But thanks to you. Thanks for, and that's again, #win is what you want to do to get in on the spin that we're going to do. Let's see here. Alex, good morning. Glad to have you here. Good morning, Charlie. Glad to have you here. Richard's in the house. Good morning, Richard. Currently a Fast Track student. That is awesome. Orange County Inside Wireman. There you go. Richard, have you used the Fast Tracks Interact yet? The feature that's built into it. Have you used that? Adam, beatbox. I don't know, man. I don't know if I have a cup of coffee in me to do beatbox today. Let's see here. Richard says, hey, Paul, where do you get these instrumentals? What do you mean instrumentals? You mean the music that I use for my shows? I have a site that I pay a subscription to called Upbeat, UPP Beat. and I pay a subscription for those. And it has tons of sounds, tons of stuff. I'm lazy because I could load a bunch more in here, but I'm lazy. Hopefully, I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with the bandwidth deal with EV and whether or not it still works after we get the faster speeds. I just don't want to load anything else in it, but we're supposedly in the next couple weeks going to get that faster speed, and then that'll fix everything for us. And then we can add some more stuff in there. But I use Upbeat for all of my music on my stuff. And then, of course, most people know it. Behind the scenes, people can see it. I do all my mixing for the show live on a Rodecaster Pro 2. Okay, so it's a big mixer that allows me to do sound effects and all this kind of other stuff. So that's what I use. That's my mixer that I use. And of course, I have a Stream Deck, which allows me to change the screens. It's really what allows a one-man show. For example, when I'm in a studio here, I've got about 6 feet of TV screen that go up about 2 feet high, wraps around me, and cameras, and then studio lights and everything. So it just allows me to have everything within my arm's reach so that I can decide what I want to do. I used to have a foot switcher that I could switch screens for just tapping on my foot, but I kept used to hit it by accident, and it was a pain in the butt, so I just got rid of it. I do everything manually. What's up, Terrence? Good morning. Glad to have you here. Edgar, good morning. It is Friday, everybody. Whoop, whoop. Good morning, Tino. Thanks for joining us. Good morning, Fina. I'll use Fina. I just say Fina for short. Thanks for joining us. Red Dog is in the house. Happy Friday to you, my friend. Happy Friday. What do we got here? Good morning from Vegas, out there in Sin City. Good morning. Crypto, good morning. Glad to have you here. So what we got here? Man, I'm feeling stronger in the code. Okay, awesome. That's what we're here. That's what we're all about, my friend. Getting you better at code, making you that go-to person in the company. Friday, that's what I'm talking about. Celebration is here. Whoop, whoop. David, happy Friday to you, my friend. Thanks for joining me here on this episode. And again, Dave sets the tone. Again, there you go. Hashtag win. Make sure you're doing hashtag win to get in on a spin. Make sure we do that today. Got a bunch of hashtags in here. Mason, thanks for joining me, Mason. Good morning. Glad to have you here. Frank the Great. Good morning. Kendra. Thank God it's Friday. Yes, sir. It's the end of the week. I should say yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. It's hit the end of the week. So, oh man, Paul's trying to stir it up. Beatbox. I don't even know if I have enough energy in me today to do a beatbox. Don't I sound kind of tired? I don't know. It's a long week. All right, Richard, thank you for the content. Thank you for the material. Thank you for going over the material, answering questions. God bless. Thank you. I need all the blessings I can get, so I appreciate it. We had a little rough day with the wife the other day, the memory thing. I tell you what, 1, getting old's a bitch. 2, Alzheimer's is unforgiving. It is unforgiving. Christopher, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Angel's in the house. Thanks for joining us, Angel. Glad to have you here. Rob's joining us, and Rob is on YouTube joining us. Probably the best one to stream on, although we are streaming on LinkedIn, on 2 channels on LinkedIn, 2 channels on Facebook, 2 YouTube channels. If you're not familiar with the other channel we have on YouTube, check it out, subscribe. If you choose, it is Coffee Hour with Paul. So that is... we have that as well, so check that out. Good morning. Glad to have you here from Florida. Thank you, Marlon. Thanks for joining us. All right, everybody keeps hitting this beatbox thing. Man, I don't think I have that energy, folks. Daryl, thanks for joining us, Daryl. Good morning. Nick, good morning. Glad to have you here. Throwing in that hashtag win as well. What do we got? Kenneth from Knoxville. Good morning from Knoxville, Tennessee. Glad to have you here this morning. And we got Adam says, I need a pint of off coffee, sir. Yep. Okay. All right, you are most welcome. I'm glad we could get that in. Okay, so again, keep it going, guys. Let me know, and gals, let me know where you're from and whatnot. So today's lesson, we're going to go over still a multifamily. We did everything. So if we were sizing this, what's up, RI? Thanks for joining us down in Clearwater. So if we were sizing a building, 12 unit or 6 unit, we've already done that. So if you don't remember that, go back to watch the beginning of the week, the 11th, 12th, and 13th of episodes of March. If you're watching this at a later date, and watch them, and you'll see how we methodically work through the standard method. Now, the reason we teach the standard method is because if you are taking an exam, you need to know how to do the standard method. And if you're sizing the neutral and you want to truly size the neutral conductor in that scenario, then you have to know how to use the standard method. So if anybody tells you otherwise, find a different educator. Run to somebody else quickly, because that's not a good educator. A good educator will put all of that personal bias aside and will teach you the National Electrical Code, just flat out, period. That's what we do in our program. Our Fast Tracks program is designed to teach you the NEC. Now, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's based on Charles Miller's document. We work closely with Cengage, and we have been a partner for years. We just changed the process a little bit so that you can get a little easier to utilize it. But everything else that we do is integrated with it. And what we do is we like to provide the extra stuff like these shows, like the Fast Tracks Tube, like the Fast Tracks Interact, all those type of things to make sure that you, during the learning process, don't have a situation where you're stuck and you don't have your questions answered. That is a critical component that's usually missing when it comes to learning the NEC. We buy books, we buy other things, but there's nobody there on the back end that can answer the questions. And I like to answer the questions, right? So, students contact me all the time, reach out, they have questions. Again, please use paulabernathy.com. Unless you're a student, then utilize the Fast Tracks Interact. That's what it's there for, okay? That type of scenario, all right? Okay, so let's go look at the unit today, and we'll just kind of wrap these up. And then I will also have a special question, let's ask Paul question, that's a multi-part question that we'll look up. And this shows you how you can submit questions as well to me using that platform. Okay, so let's go look here at today's lesson. Okay, all right, so this, you're all familiar with this if you've been following. If this is your first time here, then you missed how we did the service. Okay, so we were talking about we did an example on a 12-unit multifamily building. We calculated everything out based on what you see on the screen. And again, it's maybe small right here, hard for you to see, but I talked us through it as we did it. Okay, so go back and watch those videos. I think they're immensely important for you to understand how the multifamily work and the number of units. So now that that's done, we have to size the feeders that go out to each individual dwelling unit. Now, in our case, these are all identical. Okay, so we're going to just pick one unit and we're going to size the feeder for that unit. Now, we're still going to use these forms. This form right here is our single family dwelling form because we're talking about a single dwelling unit. So we're going to use that form. Now, again, all this is based on the 2023 edition of the National Electrical Code. So these code references that are on your forms that are in your program may be different depending on which cycle you're on. Like if you're on the 2020, there's been changes to the 2023 version over the 2020. Things have moved around a little bit. So keep that in mind. If you have the newer 2023 one and you want to use it on the 2020, then you can always mark these out and put the code reference that is relevant, that type of thing to you, if you want to mark up or change your form. But the forms are different for each Fast Tracks program, okay? There's not one generic form, okay? All right, so these are where you're going to do your references. Okay, so first thing we're doing now is we're looking at this individual unit, okay? We've already done the services here. We're doing the feeder to these units. All right, so here's the first one, all right? So as it says in 220.41 of the National Electrical Code, we are still dealing with a 3 VA per square foot. Still dealing with that, kind of lock that in your mind, whether you're doing a single family dwelling or you're doing individual dwelling units, okay, or you're doing the square footage of for the units of a multifamily for the service, it's still going to be 3 VA per square foot. Okay. Now, the one thing that I do tell people is in our example, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't say anything about common areas. It doesn't say anything about anything else. So we don't read any of that into this type of scenario. But under the 2023 edition of the NEC, even those common areas are going to fall under 3 VA per square foot for the lighting, okay, that type of scenario. So slightly changing in how we do it in the 2023 versus the way we might have done it in the past, okay? But in our example, in most of the examples you're going to run into, all you do is treat things separately. If I had a building that had the multifamily, and then I had a separate part of the building that was used for commercial applications, okay, it doesn't fall under the dwelling aspect, then I simply would use the allowances in the code to do it, the VA per square foot for the lighting, and do that separately. And then ultimately at the end, you add them together, that type of thing, okay? So we'll kind of go into that in a future coffee hour where we will kind of get into some commercial load calculations, and I'll show you how they might meld together. Not relevant in our example here, because remember, I need to reiterate this. Coffee hour is not an exam prep. We do talk exam prep, but this is a general application, general electrical lesson type of thing that we do every morning. It's not something that is like designed. I had somebody email me and says coffee hours included in their Fast Tracks program. It's not. I don't know where anybody would have gotten that from. Okay, so it's not like you're guaranteed access to the coffee hours as part of a course. No, I don't know where that came from, but I did get an email like that. Okay, kind of put me off a little bit when I was like, really? What makes you think that? Anyway, all right, so let's see here. 3 VA per square foot times, and we have to determine what the square footage is. Well, just like before, it's 30 times 35. All right, so it's 30 times 35. Trusty Casio is going to tell us it's 1,050. All right, so that's where that is. So it's 3 times 1,050 is 3,150. Okay. Now you notice these hashes. So in our form, the hashes just mean that it's something that you're going to be adding up. It's not the final number. The final number of the box will be solid. Okay. So the hashtag just as a reminder to you that this is part of an ongoing calculation. Okay. All right. Next, we have 2 small appliance branch circuits. Minimum. You have to have a minimum of 2 per 210.11c1. And then 220.52a reminds you that each one of these is 1,500 VA each, right? So 1,500 VA times 2, a minimum of 2, got to have at least 2, but our instructions, our information, okay, shows 2. All right, Jerry, if you're impatient, there's plenty of other channels you can watch, my friend. Not mine. There's other paid places. Okay. All right. I run to my beat, not to anybody else's beat, my friend. All right. So laundry branch circuit. That's next right here. Laundry branch circuit. We have at least 1. Okay. So 1,500. It tells me that it's 1,500 and 220.52b right here. And we know that in ours, we have at least 1. Now, it could be a multifamily building that when we did the service, it could be a multifamily building and it has a laundry facility on site. And if the laundry facility was accessible to all dwelling units, then we would be calculating that differently, right? That wouldn't be in here. We wouldn't have to account for the laundry circuit because it's already going to be accounted for somewhere else. But in our case, it's not, because when we did the service, you saw that it was 1 laundry branch circuit. So we obviously know each dwelling unit has a laundry circuit. But what's important is you have this little statement right here on your form that reminds you that You may not include the laundry circuit if there is a laundry facility on site. So that is an allowance that you have under 210.52, exception 1 or 2 makes that statement, okay? But you have to have at least one. If you don't have that facility on site, then you got 210.11C2, and that's going to require you to have at least one laundry circuit. And again, 220.52B is 1,500 VA, okay? That's what it gives it. So 1,500 times 1, and there is 1,500. So we have 3,150, 3,000, and 1,500, okay? All right, so we add all those up, and I'm going to add those up to make sure the numbers are right. 3,150 plus 3,000 plus 1,500. It's 7,650. And that's what we have right here, 7,650. All right, so in our form, you're just going to translate this down to right here, right, to 5. That is from line 4. That's what this was here, goes right here. Now, remember, when we're using this, we are doing the individual dwelling unit. We get to use the demands that are found in 220.45. We do get to use those. Now, we used those when we did the service. Now we're doing the individual dwelling unit. We most certainly get to use this as well. So in this case, the first 3,000 is 100%. And that's what it tells you in the table of 220.45. It says the first 3,000, take it at 100%. So you take that 3,000, set it aside. We're going to add it back later. Take it out of the number. So I take that 7,650. I'm going to take 3,000 out of it. That gives me 4,650. Now, when you're looking at the table 220.45, you're going to see that it says up to 3,000 is 100%. Then it says 3,001 up to 120,000 would take at 35%. Well, we're used to just saying the next 117,000. Because 117,000 plus this 3,000 is 120. So since we're only working with the value that's over 3,000, it's just real common for us in the industry to say, okay, the first 3,000 and 100, and then the next 117,000. Because if your value, after you take the 3,000 away from it, if your value doesn't exceed 117,000, then you just take that and apply 35% to it. In our case, it was 4,650, right? So we just took 4,650, we multiply that by 35%, and that gives us 1,628. Not going to trust our math, we're going to do it. 4,650, we do is multiply that by 0.35, and that's what we get, 1,627.5, and there you go. Right? So again, at this point, you could round it or leave it and round it once you get to the amps, or you can round it as you go. Either way, it's going to bring you to the same result. And so typically 220.5 is for amp rounding. So there are many places that say, you know what, don't round it yet. But I think that in all of the years that I've done it, I've never really seen where it makes a significant difference in anything if you go on and just round it as you go. So 1627.5, just go on to 1628, and it's going to be okay in your overall scheme of your rounding. Okay. All right. So there it is right there. So there you go. Now, what we have to do now, there's your 1628. We have to bring this 3 back. We have to bring this 3 back, right? Because we set it aside for later, right? Because it was at 100%. That means we take the full 3,000. So we got to bring it back to our math. So we bring it back. 3,000, bring it back to that 1628. And that should be 4,628. So let's see, 3,000 plus 1628. All right, 4,628. That's what we got right here. So ding, 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 ding. Now you notice on the form, as you're studying and as you're learning, and you're using this form. Now I have people that ask me all the time. They go, Paul, why are we using a form? Don't I have to learn this because I can't take the form into the exam? And I'm like, yeah, well, that should be common sense. I think the world we're starting to lack common sense. This is common sense. You're using the form as the learning tool so that you can learn the steps, the processes, and maybe even associated with numbers, like, you know, the step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, you know, yada, yada, yada. It's all training yourself. And that's what sets our program different. There's some programs that are out there that I saw this one being sold on TikTok. I saw it and I kind of laughed a little bit. Not that other educators out there, that's not what I'm laughing about. What I was laughing is how they did it. And it was like it's like 100 pages. And I was sitting there going, do you really think that that's the right way to study for an exam? It's just quick little snippets that really doesn't give you examples and stuff like that. It's not the right way to study. So I kind of thought it was funny, but then I laughed. I said, it doesn't matter. They'll eventually come knocking on our door anyway. So what's it matter? I just hate to see people spend hard-earned money for things that are maybe half-ass. That's just my opinion. Okay. All right. So, but I'm not the only thing out there. There's others out there. I'm just saying, when I see some of the stuff that people are trying to turn a quick buck, I'm like, I don't know. I've been doing this for 40 years nearly. So I don't know. I want to make sure that you learn it and retain it. Okay. So, another quick thing. I got to get this stuff out of the way, guys. Sorry. I got to get this out of the way. A lot of people call and buy our programs, and they like my videos. They do, like Kenneth says, breaking it down. They love to watch my videos over on Fast Tracks Tube and all that stuff. But they think that when they buy our course, that's what you're getting. You're getting me one-on-one with you in videos teaching, and that is not what you get. What you get is the course physical material with the chevrons, and you have a code book, and you have to go in and out. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of competency reviews, okay? Because I'm a big believer that to fully absorb information, you have to read it. And you have to read it, and you have to understand it. And I don't always think watching a video for a lot of the stuff for calculations, it's great. But when you're trying to learn the code so that you can keep certain things in memory, especially for an exam, like even the issues with spacing and the securing and supporting and all that stuff, that's stuff that you can watch in a video, but you're going to forget about it. You're not going to retain it. But if I make you read it and I make you look at the code book every time I give you a chevron and you follow the concept of read it, and we try to make sure that there's chevrons everywhere so that you can stop, go to the code, read it, then come back. And then we hit you with competency reviews at the end to solidify what you should have gone through. I mean, clearly I could do a video series. Clearly I have studio, I can do videos on everything. And people say, well, I wish you would do a whole Fast Tracks just videos only. I just don't think you would learn the right way. That's why we created Fast Tracks Tube, so that you can have supplemental videos to help reiterate stuff, but not be a full video course. Obviously, I could do that, but we have thought about it. I just don't think that people will learn the right way. At least I don't think so. This is why we do what we do. Okay, just so I wanted to get that out of the way. Okay, all right. I'll never say never, but I am very focused on making sure my videos supplement the material, not drive the material. Okay, if that makes sense. All right, so anyway, here is the total for this one. You notice gray, so that's going to be part of our overall calculation. So if you're following along, write that number down. All right, next, we have the appliances that are in here. Okay, now, what was different than when we went and did the multifamily for the 12 unit or 6 unit was that we already knew we had more than what? We had more than four or more, right? Okay, so in this scenario, we can see already that we're going to have at least 4, right? Appliances that are fastened in place. We got a water heater right there. We got a dishwasher right there. We got a disposer right there. And we got this microwave oven right there. So we have 4, okay? So remember, in the code, in 220.53, under the standard method, if I have 4 or more, then I get to apply a demand factor of 75%. But what's important for you to remember is that if you get a scenario where you don't have 4 or more, if you have 3, then you have to account for the full value. You just don't get to apply the 75. That's it. So if I didn't have 4 or more, that's okay. I just take the full value and apply it to my load. I just don't apply a demand to it, okay, in the standard method. Okay? So in this case, we do. So we're going to add them all up and see if we can get some demands going on here. So we have 4,500 plus 1,200 plus 900 plus 1,200. And what we've got is 7,800, Mr. Casio. Okay, there we go. All right, and so now we do get to apply the demands that are given to us in 220.53. That's what it says. Okay, it says if you have 4 or more units, right, then I'm able to apply or if you have 4 or more fasten in place appliances, then I get to apply a demand factor. What's up, Jack Radio? We have another CMECP in the house. So thanks for joining us. Glad to have you here, my friend. All right, so here you got 7,800, and you multiply that by 75%. I'm going to do that just so we can get the numbers. So this is 5,850. So you see this is a solid box. So that means that's going to be added to our list. So I might as well do that with us while I'm here. I'm going to write the 4628, and I'm going to write the 5850. Write that down. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you at this point is of these two that we just did, that is a neutral load. Okay, there is neutrals. All of these are 120 volt loads when it comes to general lighting and general use receptacles. Okay, so you could actually write this out on the side, put an N right here if you wanted to save time. You could put a little N right here, and you could write this number right here, and because it's exactly the same for the neutral contribution. Okay, now when it comes to the fasten in place, this was including both 240 volt and 120 volt because we're trying to find it for the hot conductors. But while you're here, you could just do the neutral. Now, this is interesting because when you do the neutral, notice that we would only have 3 fasten in place appliances because the water heater is not a neutral load. Okay, that's a 240 volt load. So if this is the case, my neutral contribution, I love when we do these because it lets you think of all of the little what ifs, and I like to share as many tidbits as I can with you. Good morning, Charles. Glad to have you here. All right, so in this case, I would have to take the full value of all 3 of these. So my neutral contribution here would be 1,200 plus 1,200 plus 900. So the neutral contribution would be 3,300, and I could write that out here on the side if I wanted to save me a little time. And the reason I don't apply the 75% to the neutral this time is because I don't have 4 or more fasten in place appliances. That makes sense? It's just that easy if you slow it down and you think about it. All right, let's go on to, and I am going to write that down since we're here. I'm going to write my neutral 3,300 for my neutral loads. Okay, while we're at it, I'm going to practice what I preach and we'll write that down. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay. So now we're going to tackle that clothes dryer, that cooking appliance, and we're going to tackle that heating versus AC. Just like we did when we did the multifamily, it's no different in the process. You just have fewer of them. And so in this case, the clothes dryer. All right, well, 220.54 in the standard method says what? You use 5,000 watts or 5 kW or 5 kVA, all right? You use the 5,000 or the nameplate, and it tells you this right in 220.54, okay? And so in that scenario, we look at ours, and the clothes dryer is 5,000. Now, what's important here and how this differs from the optional method that we're going to start on Monday, we're going to be doing all of this, but we're going to do it optional, and we're going to, at the end, look at the size differences so that you see why we use the optional in the field, really. And on exam, the reason they typically use a standard is because they want to make sure you know how to go through all these hoops, all these little hurdles. And kind of like a test on an exam is a benchmark, okay? They just want to know that you know how to do it. The real learning begins once you get that license and you're out in the field. But they just have that, it's kind of like they're the gatekeepers. You just have to get over that exam hurdle. So they give you all these types of questions. And in fact, they may give you questions you freaking never, ever run into in the field. But you're like, dude, you're asking me this on an exam? And the answer is yeah, because they want to just see if you know how to maneuver through the code book and things like that. So there is people out there that say you don't need to learn the standard method, that everything's going to be optional. I'm telling you right now, they're full of crap. And if they're an educator, you need to run as quickly as you can. Because as a person that writes exam questions and have served on these boards to write questions, we are most certainly writing questions based on the standard method, when in reality, in the field, you may not use the standard method. But you did have to know how to use it, do it. Why? Because we still have to size a neutral. Why? Because 220.61, which dictates the neutral sizing, that's in part 3 for the standard or the normal method. That is not in the optional method. So I can't use it in the optional method if the instructions are over in the standard method, okay? And we'll cover all that when we do the optional starting next week, okay? And I love doing the optional method because then it kind of relates to what you probably will do in the field, and it gets you ready for that type of thing. What's up, Bryson? Thanks for joining us. All right, so let's look at it. So we got 5, and ours is 5, so we're going to be using 5,000, okay? So that's our clothes dryer. The next is the household cooking. Now, this one is interesting. Okay, so in this case, we're doing the feeder, and you'll notice something that we're looking at. So if you look up here, you'll notice that it is a electric range, and it is 12 kW. So remember what we did when we did this, the multifamilies? We went to column C, right? And we're going to do the same thing here. But the difference in column C for one electric cooking, for one range, for example, when you go to table 220.55 and you see where it says 1, it says 8,000. So we're not going to be using that 12. We're going to be using 8,000 here. So even though we know that this range in our example says it's 12 kW, in the standard method, we're allowed to what? It's not over 12. Okay, so this unit is 12, so it's not over 12, so we're still going to be in column C. But when you come down to column C, you got one range, you go to the right, it's 8,000. So that throws off a lot of people. Let's see if the code book's working today. It is working today, go figure. So let's just go down real quick and let me show you that so that you can see what I'm talking about. We'll close this down right here. Okay, so right here, you see one appliance right here. And if you go to the right, we'll pop this out real quick so it's a little easier to see. So you got one appliance, that's what we've got. And you go to the right. If I can get it to go to the right, there you go. Column C, this is the demand in kW. We see that you use 8. Since our range we're dealing with is not over 12, so we don't have to use any notes. Okay, we just come down and we just use 8. And that throws a lot of people. They want to put 12. No. Why? Because it says right here, column C is to be used in all cases except as otherwise permitted in note 3. And note 3 is going to let us use column B or column A if the range or cooking appliance falls within these kW ranges. But ours doesn't. It's over these, and it's not over 12, so it's purely drawing from column C. Okay? And column C says one range is 8 kW or 8,000 VA or 8,000 watts. And that is it. That's what we use. So that does, in some cases, people get really quickly into the math and it throws them and they say, well, wait a minute, I see 12. What the hell happens to that extra VA? Well, it's diversity. It gets absorbed into it. So you don't have to worry about it. You simply follow what the code says. Now, how does that differ from the optional method that you'll see next week? Well, the optional method just takes the nameplate. So we're going to be working with that 12 kW next week because that's what's nameplate, that's what's printed on it, right? That scenario. So again, that can confuse a lot of people, but don't let it confuse you, okay? Charlie says if you're using the note for oven or cooktop in one room on a single branch circuit, again, that's a branch circuit applications, not what we're doing in this scenario. But again, you do have allowances if you're running the branch circuit, okay? So we're not going to get into that today because well, sure enough, The moment I said that, we lose it and I can't see it. So it's gone. Okay. I don't know if y'all can see it. I'm going to have to go to Fast Track's tube real quick and see if you can see it because I've lost my feed. So I can't see whether or not you guys see it or not. So I've got to go see if it's over here before I discuss it. Otherwise, I'm totally off. This is why I'm giving EV Mucks one opportunity once we get the faster internet to get it right. If they don't, I'm dropping them, and we're not going to be sending money their way. Okay, we're gonna cut all of our funds off to those folks. Okay, so I'll give them one opportunity. They say it's my fault on my end. They get one chance. Okay, and I don't function right if I can't see the screen like you. So I'm going to try to work this through. All right, so if we go over here, what you're talking about is we get the allowance to use, okay, this, and I got to scroll down so you can see it, for branch circuiting right here. So we have some additional notes down here that we get to use when it comes to sizing for the branch circuit, right? So here it says calculating the branch circuit load for one range in accordance with table 220.55 shall be permitted. Okay, so we can use this table if we're doing a branch circuit for a range. We can use the values from this table. Okay. Also, if you have one wall-mounted oven and one counter-mounted cooking unit, right, then the unit shall be the nameplate rating of the appliances. So what you do with that is if you have one cooktop and you have one wall-mounted unit for the branch circuit sizing, you simply add the nameplates together, okay, for the branch circuit sizing. Right? That's all it tells you right there. It says for branch circuit loading, for one wall-mounted oven and one counter-mounted cooking, it's basically shall be the nameplate rating of the appliances. Add them together. Now, when it comes to branch circuits for a counter-mounted, when you have you have one cooktop and you have not more than two wall-mounted ovens. And again, we're talking branch circuits right here, folks. Although I have a video that explains all this over on Fast Track's tube, which is why I didn't want to get into it, because I have a detailed video already on this, and it wasn't part of our example, and I knew it would get us off track. But in this case, one counter-mounted cooking unit and two wall-mounted ovens, and they're all supplied by a single branch circuit located in the same room, which is in that same kitchen. Then it says it shall be calculated by adding the nameplate ratings of the individual appliance together and then treating it like a range, okay? So in that scenario, if you have not more than two, so if you have one countertop cook unit and one wall-mounted oven, you are permitted, okay? You are so permitted for the branch circuit sizing to add the two together and now treat it like it's a range, act like it's a range. And that means that you can apply all of the allowances in the table in that scenario as well. So if they're smaller, right, then you can add the two together in that way, and size it that way for the branch circuit. Or you're allowed to take, if you have a cooktop and not more than two ovens, then you add the nameplates together and you can treat that like one range and do it that way and size it as well, okay? All we're doing is following the rules in the notes as they apply to your situation, okay? I encourage you to go watch that video. Charlie, I think you have access to Fast Track's tube, so go and watch the range videos. Watch the branch circuit one video, okay? All right, let's see here. I got to get back on track. Where are we at? Okay, so in our case, it's 8,000. We're using it for that range, 8,000, okay? And then, of course, lastly is the heating and air conditioning system. And that is where we're going to compare the heat versus the AC. Now, you remember when we did the 12 unit and the 6 unit, it was quite extensive in how we compared. And of course, heat won on all those. Heat was always larger than all of those scenarios. Well, obviously, if you've been following along at the beginning of the week when we did the multifamily, the 12 and the 6 unit, obviously, you know, we're using the same unit. So we know that the heat is going to be greater than the AC. But we need to go through that exercise because there's always new people that come in and they look at 220.60 and it is very confusing with how it's written. And so we want to make sure that everybody understands it. Okay, so the heat versus AC. So the first thing we have to get is VA. Now, if you were given let's say this air handler was a horsepower rating, then you all know the first thing you need to do is go to 430.248 and get the FLC for that horsepower motor under that voltage range. Once you have that FLC, which is the amps, then you can do the math. And ours already has that done already, right? Because they give us 3 amps for this air handler, right, at 115. They give us the air conditioning compressor is 14 amps at 230. So they've already, in our example, they've already done that. I mean, they already went and got the FLC and did all that. So we skipped a step here, okay? But just be very aware that you may get something that is a horsepower rating, and you need to go into those tables in 430.248 or 250, depending on whether it's single phase or 3-phase, and you need to find what the FLC is. Now remember, the FLC is different than what would be on the nameplate of the motor, because that's typically we refer to as the FLA. Okay, so that is different because the amps that are on the nameplate of a motor takes other things into consideration like power factor and all this kind of stuff, and that can vary. Whereas the values that are on the FLC are set in stone and they're in the NEC. So if you base it around this, even if the motor gets more efficient or it fluctuates over time when people are replacing motors, we keep it consistent when it comes to the FLC. Why? Because we size motors, conductors that go to motors with the FLC. Feeders, we use the FLC. The short circuit ground fault protection, we base it on the FLC. All those things are based on the FLC. The FLA or the nameplate, we use that when we're dealing with overloads when it comes to motors, okay? 430.32. So that type of thing. Now, we also use the nameplate when we're doing certain types of motors when it comes to like intermittent duty, and that's in 430.22. If you haven't watched my video on motors over on Fast Tracks Tube, you need to watch the motors video, okay? It's a great video, and we go over short circuit ground fault protection, overloads, feeders, conductor sizing. We go over all of that. Those are the bedrock things that you need to know about motors. We go over that. And on our Fast Tracks program, we even have that video in our course so you can watch that video, okay? Because I go over things and break it down, because that one does work better with the visual, because I can show you some examples, that type of thing. So make sure you check that out. And you can find it over on Fast Tracks too by just searching for motors. It should come up too. You use a search bar and that type of thing. Okay, where are we at? Okay, so we have to look. So the heat is easy. It's 5 kW, so I like to get everything in VA. Y'all know that. So VA is synonymous, as it tells you right here. So that's 5,000 VA. And then this air handler, which is not a non-coincident load. And what do we mean by that? It means that when the heat's running, the air handler's working because it's blowing that heat. Well, when the AC is running, what is the air handler doing? It's running. It's blowing that cool air, okay? We didn't say anything about a heat pump here, okay? We didn't even mention heat pump. So if you want to learn about what happens when there's a heat pump, make sure you go watch our coffee hour when we did single family dwellings. I go into detail about how you would treat a heat pump. So make sure you go watch that. I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but make sure you go watch it. And that's why you need to watch every episode of Coffee Hour so you can get everything you can. Free education, fellas. What can you do? All right. All right, so in this case, we need to find out what the FLC is right here. Let's see here. So air handler 3, not the FLC. We need to find out what the actual amps VA is here. So 3 times 115. So 3 times 115, that is 345. So this air handler's VA is 3 times 115. Remember, did y'all join me for that math session when we were doing all that electrical math? There you go. So 3 times 115, that is 345. You add that to the heat, and that is 5,345. Okay. Now, compare that to the AC, right? So the AC, well, we still have that 345 for the air handler. For the AC, we're going to take that 14 times 230. Okay, so 14 times 230, and that is 3,220. And then we've got this condensing fan motor, 2 times 115. So let's go 2 times 115, and that is 230. Okay, well, now we need to add up what we just did for the AC first, and then compare it to the heat to see which is larger. Okay, we already know what the heat is. So let's add these up. So 3220 for the air conditioner compressor, plus, let's see, 230 for the condensing fan, plus 345 for the air handler. That is 3,795. That is obviously less than the heat. Now, since that air conditioning compressor is the largest motor in this dwelling, we now have to redo the math again, and that's what you have to remember about 220.60. If you're in the 2017, you can ignore all that. Just choose which is larger. And at this point, heat would be your larger, and you just run with it. But in the 2020 and 2023, you have to look at it and go, okay, since the largest motor is part of the non-coincident load that's the lesser of the two, then I have to redo the math and take that air conditioning compressor at 125% plus the other loads, the condensing fan and the air handler, and now compare that to the heat again and see if it's still less than the heat. All right, so we took that 3220, which is the 14 times 230. So 3220 times 1.25, that gives me 4,025 plus the 230 plus the 345, that gives me 4,600. Trusted Casio there. That is still less than the 5,345 for the heat. So guess what? The AC gets dumped. It's gone. We're just going with the heat, okay? And that's why we get 5,345 right here. That's how we get that. Make sense? All right, hold on here. I'm about to lose my TikTok, folks. All right. So now let's go with what we've been doing also. Okay, because I'm going to write these down. We got 5,000, we got 8,000, and we got 5,345. Now, while we're here, I can say, let's go on and knock these neutrals out of the way. Just because we're here, right? Just do it. So this 5,000, remember what it says right here? That we can now apply under 220.61b, we can apply additional demand of 70% to the dryer value. So this 5,000, we can apply a 70% to that. So that's 5,000 times 0.70, and that is 3,500. So that's the neutral contribution. You can write that out here on the side if you want. I'm just going to write 3,500. We're just saving a step right now is all we're doing. Okay. Now, same thing for the cooking. Same rule applies. I'm allowed to apply an additional demand factor. Okay, so I'm going to take that 8,000. I'm going to multiply that by 0.7, and that gives me 5,600. Okay, so I got 5,600. Okay, and now getting down to the heat versus AC. Now, when it comes to the neutral loads, I want to just take that neutral load. Now, remember, when it comes to heat and AC, when you're doing the neutral, it's not a comparison. It's all of the heating and AC that has a neutral contribution that gets added to your neutral calculation, right? So in this scenario, I know that this condenser fan is 115 volt load, so that's neutral. I know that this air handler is a 115 volt, and so it's neutral. Now keep in mind that in some of your calculations, the air handler may be a 240 volt load. That's okay. Then it just wouldn't have a neutral contribution. It's no biggie. Okay, don't make it harder than it is. Okay, so in this scenario I only have two things that have a neutral contribution when it comes to the AC versus heat, because everything else is 240. All right, so that was a 230 VA for this condensing fan and 345 VA for this air handler. You remember? Just 3 times 115. So that is 345 plus 230. That is 575. So right here, for the neutral, I would just write out to the side 575 VA. That's my neutral when it comes to heat and air conditioning. That's my only neutral load. See, this is how I do like a running calculation, okay? All right. Now, lastly, we need to get that largest motor. So in our case, since we got rid of the AC, it's all gone, right? It's gone. And so now I have to find the next largest motor in this dwelling unit. And in this case, the largest actual motor would be a in-sink waste garbage disposer, because that typically comes in a horsepower rating. Okay, dishwashers don't come in horsepower ratings. So we're going to use the in-sink waste disposer or garbage disposal, okay? And that is 7.5 amps times 120. That should be 900. Now, keep in mind that it depends on who wrote your exam because they may, in their mind, think that the dishwasher qualifies as the largest motor, other motor. So I encourage you to do the math on both and see what the answers are, okay? Just because you never know where their mind may be. But typically, when I'm writing stuff, and again, you can't control what these people that write the exams write or what's in their mind, or everybody's interpretation's different. They might consider that a motor, but even though there's a motor involved in it, I consider that a pure appliance or utilization equipment, and I don't consider that for my motor calc. Because I know that garbage disposers do come in horsepower ratings, then even though it is an appliance or it qualifies to be in that list under 220.53 because it is over a quarter horsepower, okay? So it's going to be in that list anyway. I prefer to say when I'm looking for a motor, I'm looking for the pure motor, okay? What is actual motor? I mean, all a garbage disposer is a damn motor that grinds up stuff. That's pretty much what it is. It doesn't have another mutual function, okay? Whereas a dishwasher has a motor and for turning it, and it has heating and all this stuff. It's multiple things, okay? So again, that's how I justify it. You can agree to disagree. I'm just trying to make it simple for you to understand. But be prepared and be fluid. And now that you're used to this, it wouldn't take you but a second to substitute, for example, 1200 for 900 to get a different value and then check your math, okay? You got to be fluent like that on an exam. And in the real world, it's not going to make that much of a difference, okay? So about 2 amps difference is all, okay? So just keep that in mind, all right? I want you to be fluent. That's why we're learning, okay? Is be fluent in how we can do the math. All right, so all we're trying to do is capture this 25% of the largest motor. Why? Because we already have all the motors in the calculation. We've already done that. Okay, all of those utilization equipment, all those appliances, we've already taken into consideration the disposer before, all right? But if you look at 220.50, it says go look at 430.24, which ultimately says, hey, if you got multiple motors, let's say, in this building, I want you to take the largest motor at 125% and then the sum of the others at their rating, okay? Well, we've already done all of them at their rating, okay? So just find the largest one and get me that extra 25% so that I can meet the rules of 430.24 as referenced in 220.50. And so, okay, fine. So I just go search for the next largest motor. And you might be saying, why can't I use the air conditioning compressor? Because that is the largest motor. Because you discounted it. You got rid of it. Okay, so when the heat's running, all right, then it's already greater than the AC. Even at 125%, the heat was greater, so that accommodates for that. So that's done. So when the heat's running, we have to now go and find the second largest motor in the dwelling, okay? Now, when the AC's running, right, and you didn't take it at 125%, you're just taking the AC at its value because the heat was sized larger, then it doesn't matter, but you're still utilizing whatever the largest motor is in there and getting that extra 25%. So if you're looking in the code and you're looking for it to actually, this gets frustrating for people. If you're looking for the code to tell you about that extra 25%, you're not going to find it, folks. Stop struggling. It tells you when you go to 220.50 and it sends you to 430.24, and in 230.24, it says take the largest motor 125%. Well, you haven't taken anything at 125% in this calculation yet. So all you're trying to do is say, okay, how do I meet this rule? Find that largest motor, multiply that by 25%, take that small amount, that 25%, and add it to my calculation, and now I've done it. And you met the requirements of 220.50, and it's referenced 430.24. So you've met it. And that's what we've done here. So the next largest motor that we can use in this calc is the in-sink waste disposer. That's 900 times 25% is 225. So you add it in. So I'm going to add that down here, 225. Now, also, since that disposer right here Since that disposer is also 120 volt, we know it's got a neutral contribution. So out to the right, this 225 is also going to be my neutral contribution. So I'm going to write that out to the under the neutral as well. So y'all see what I've done. I just gone down and written them down, just like y'all would do right here. Just like you're doing on this form, okay? And so we're going to add them up and make sure everything matches. So let's get our trusted Casio out, and I'm going to add everything up. So 4628 plus 5850 plus 5,000 plus 8,000 plus 5345 plus 225, okay? So we should have 29,048. And there is our trusted Casio calculation right there, okay? All right, so that is our total VA demand load, okay? And we added up all of these solid blocks, okay? So you can see all these solid blocks, we've done it, okay? All right, so take that 29,048, right? Paul says the math is correct, so we're good. 29,048, divide that by 240, that is our source voltage, and that gives us, so let's take 29,048, we're gonna divide that by 240, and that is 121.03. The 0.03 we can drop, so it's just 121. Now, we have to have a conductor that is good for 121 amps. So that is our amps that we need. We have a conductor that's got at least handle, because that's our calculated value right there. Now, we protect this conductor. We're allowed to use, we have to find an overcurrent protected device, and you're going to find one that does not correspond with the 121. So we would go to 240.6a and we find the next standard size, okay? And in this case, if we were to go look, and I'll go to the code, I'm pretty sure it won't be there, all right? It's not, for me, it's not there, but it's probably there for you. Somebody let me know if you can see it, and I'll just keep going, assuming that you can. And it will go to 240.6, and we're at this table right there. And since we don't have one for 121, let's see here. So we're going to be going to, it goes from 110 to, let's see here. Let me double check and make sure it's working. Okay, it looks like it is. So we don't have for 110. Okay, good. You can see it. The next standard size is 125. So that's going to be the rating of our circuit, okay, is 125, all right? All right, so the rating of our circuit is going to be 125, but I have to have a conductor that is at least good for 121 amps. Now, since this is, again, 240.4, we know that this is what? This is less, okay? This is less than what? Anybody? Less than 800 amps. Then we know that next size up rules apply. We can use the next size up rule to protect it. However, on an exam, this one right here should trigger something for you, okay? This should trigger something. I get a lot of emails now that say, well, Paul, could I just now go to the code and size it based on 121 amps? Absolutely, you could. So let's go to the code real quick. I'm going to go here. I think y'all can still see it. And I'll go to 310.16. And in the real world, could I do this? Let's go to 310.16. Ampacity. And I'll go to the table right here. So in a 310.16, I'm at 121. I could, under the 75 degree, because of what? 110.14c, we're over 100 amps, okay? So I'm going to go down here, and let's just say that I could use a, looks like it'd be a 1 gauge right here, right? So it looks like it'd be good for 130 amps that I could use 1 gauge, and that would be okay. I can do that. That would be perfectly acceptable for me to do that, right? If I wanted to do that. However, let's go look and see that we do have some allowances. If we come back to the lesson, we do see this in part right here, sizing the conductors. Now, you probably are familiar with 310.12a. If you're in an earlier cycle, say you're studying in the 2017 or whatnot, then it would be 310.15b7. which now is 310.12, you have some unique allowances. And these unique allowances are for feeders and service conductors, and what you can do with these and how you actually can use something we call the 83% rule. Now, there's caveats to this. First of all, when I did this calculation, I have to be between 100 and 400 amperes. Well, I am. I'm 121 and I'm at a 125 amp overcurrent device. So I'm good. I am within that realm. Next, it has to be a 3-wire system, 120, 240 volt. Okay. And for our case, it also has a three-phase allowance. Okay. But in our case, this is a single phase 120, 240 volt application, as evident by the source voltage that we used. So that qualifies. All right. And what's unique about this one is this is the feeder allowance. So we say, okay, since this is the feeder allowance, as long as that feeder is supplying that individual dwelling unit in a multifamily dwelling, as long as that feeder is supplying 100% of the loads that it's in that dwelling unit, that individual dwelling unit, then I'm able to use the allowances in 310.12, okay? So let's go look at 310.12 real quick, because this is where it gets you on exams. And also, in the real world, you always use this rather than using 310.16, because that's a larger conductor, and who wants to spend that extra money when you don't have to? You can if you want. On an exam, you will always use 310.12, okay? This is not an exception. This is a rule in the code, the allowance. It's not like, if they say don't use exceptions, I can't use 310.12. That's not true, because this is not an exception. This is a permitted allowance for you to be able to use the 83% rule, okay? All right, so let's go back to the code. It won't let you see it. I mean, it won't let me see it, but you can see it. All right, so we'll look at 310.12 right here and see what are caveats that we have to meet, okay? So we're not doing service here. We're doing a feeder, all right? But just so you can see this, it says that you can use 310.12. It says for one family dwellings and individual dwelling units of a 2-family and multifamily dwelling. That's what we're doing, okay? That's what we're doing today. We're doing the individual unit, okay? It says that the service feeder conductor supplied by a single phase 120, 240 volt system, which is what we've got, shall be permitted, permissive statement, not an exception, permissive statement. It means you don't have to do it. You're permitted to do it. And why would you not do it, right? It's going to yield a smaller conductor. It's going to cost less. It's going to be more efficient for cost-wise and everything like that. But if you want to go bigger, you can. That's why it's permissive. And you follow the sizing requirements that are in 310.12a through D, okay? Now, also, you're allowed to do it as well here when you have a single-phase feeder conductors consisting of 2 ungrounded conductors and a neutral from a 208Y 120 volt system, also shall be permitted to use 310.12A through C, okay? But at the end of the day, you can't use D, and D is for the grounded conductor. Why? Because that grounded conductor in this type of system could have equal to or as much current as the ungrounded hot conductors. So you can't utilize D, but you can utilize A, B, and C, which is the sizing of the ungrounded hot conductors and whatnot, okay? So anyway, this is what we're doing. So we're not using A, we're using B, okay? All right, so B says for a feeder, that's what we got, rated 100 amperes through 400, that's what we got. It says the feeder conductor supplying the entire load associated with one dwelling unit. Well, that's not ours, okay? What we've got is, or the feeder conductor supplying the entire load associated with an individual dwelling unit of a multifamily dwelling. That's what we've got, okay? Then it shall be permitted to have an ampacity. We're talking about those conductors now. Shall have permitted to have an ampacity not less than, so it can't be less than, 83% of the feeder rating. Well, what's the feeder rating? That 125. That's the feeder rating. That's what the rating is, the overcurrent device. That dictates what the feeder rating is. Now, If there's no adjustment or corrections due to ambient temperatures or number of current carrying conductors, if there's none of that, then you can just pull straight from this table right here, okay? So in our case, if it's a 125 right here, then it would be just a 2 gauge right there, copper, right? Or a 1/0 aluminum. Now, here's something that I have to remind you of. You can only use this table if you do not have conditions of use, okay? Now, what is conditions of use? Conditions of use means if I'm running this feeder and I'm running it in a location in this building out to this individual dwelling unit, and I change its condition of use where I have more than 3 current carrying conductors, or if I take it and I install it in a location with an ambient temperature other than 30 degrees C, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. If that is the case, then I'm going to have to alter the ampacity of this conductor, okay, of these conductors, of this cable, or what you're using. So that's critically important to remember, that you can only use this table if there is no conditions of use that apply. So be careful, because if there is a condition of use, then you're going to have to adjust the conductor, possibly adjust the conductor size. But the good news is, when you're doing that, you would use the same rules that we use when we talk about derating demystified, where you take the ampacity from the 90 and you adjust it and correct it, those type of things. You can use all those rules, but you have to remember that at the end of the day, whatever conductor size that you come up with, it still can't be less than 83% of the rating of the device, okay, of the feeder. So even if I have to adjust the conductor for ampacity and do all this stuff, and I go to a bigger conductor, and ultimately, if I have a condition of use, just remember, at the end of the day, it still can't be less than 83% of the feeder's rating, which in this case is a 125, okay? Now, if we wanted to do the math ourselves and show you how this works, then all we would do is take that 125 and multiply that by 0.83. And that's 103.75, okay? So that is the case. If it's 100, then all we would do at that point is we take 125 times 0.83, that is 103.75. Then we go to the NEC. This is if you didn't want to use the table, by the way, right? And then you would simply go and go to the ampacity, 310/16. Under here, and we go, it was 103.75. Then you go down here, and that's, you see that this is 115, and that is the 2. And so it works out the same. So the table is just there for you. But I prefer you know how to do the math, right? You know how to figure it out, right? That type of thing, right? All right. Let's see here. Next. Okay, we're running over, but I got to make sure I got a question of the day. I'm going to have to answer it because I promised that individual that I would. So I'm going to make sure I answer it today. Now, we have to finish everything about the neutral real quick, just so we can finish out like we did before. So remember the values that we came up with the neutral? Well, what is interesting here is that, again, 310.12d, remember where we're using 310.12, it states that the neutral service or feeder conductor can be smaller than the ungrounded hot conductors, provided the requirements of 215.2, 220.61, and 230.42 are met. Okay, so it's got to be at least a minimum size first, right? So, but first, let's see what this would be based on our calculation, right? Let's see what it would be based on our calc. Okay, so you remember we got these neutral loads that we did earlier right here? Let's add those up real quick. Right, so let's go. I'm going to add it. So I had 4628. Remember, that was the general use and general lighting. So we're adding that up. We had the 5850, but we only took the neutral loads of those fastened in place. So that was 3300. Remember? Do you remember? And then the next we did the range, but we did it at 70%. So that was 3500. Then we took the heating. Oh, that was the dryer at 5,000. We took it at 70%. That was 3,500. The range was 8,000. At 70% was 5,600. So we do it at 5,600. Okay. Now, plus the heating and air, the neutral load was 575, so we did that. And then, of course, the largest motor, the neutral one, was 225. Okay, so that would be 17,828, if my math is correct. And we simply divide that by 240, and that gives me 74.28 amperes. Okay, 74.28 amperes. So in that scenario, we're going to go look at 31016 again and see what the amps are for that. All right. Now, this is one that kind of throws people a little bit because they say, well, wait a minute. Am I going to be in the column 60 degree or am I being 75? All right, so here's what we do with this one, just so you get an understanding of what's going on. Since we already sized the hot conductors, okay, since we already did the hots and we knew that that was over 100, then those conductors are going to be 75 degree rated at a minimum, okay? Probably going to be 90 degree rated, probably a THHN, THWN-2, probably an XHHW-2. But since we already dictated the size, and in a cable assembly, this is already going to be dictated for us. So even though this neutral looks like it's under 100 amps, and you're thinking, whoa, well, I got to go to column, I've got to go to the 60 degree because it's under. No, you don't, because we already know that the ungrounded conductors were over 100, so they're going to be 75. Okay, so you're going to use the same due to the way you run the circuits, and you're going to be the same ampacity. I mean, it's going to be the same temperature ratings. Okay, that's just something you have to know. Now, in the field, that's a no-brainer. If you buy the cable assembly, already going to be made that way. If you're buying MC and you do this for the feeder, it's already going to be the way. If you're buying SER, are going to be figured out that way. If you're running individual conductors in a raceway, you're not going to find any 60 degree rated insulation anymore. You're not going to be running TW if you're going to be running THHN, THWN-2, or XHHW. You're not going to be doing that. So it kind of takes care of itself. Okay. So in this scenario, we're going to go back and look at it and say, okay, we're going to be under the 75 degree column. And here we are. And let me see if I can open this and pin it. Okay, we're right here. And we just got to come down and find a conductor that's good for 74 amps. All right, so it looks like it needs to be a 4 gauge because this is only good for 65. So right here, it needs to be a 4 gauge for our neutral. Okay, 4 gauge, or its equivalent would be a 3 aluminum. Right? So that's what we've got going on right there. Okay. All right. Now, we also, since we're talking smaller conductors, we also want to see what the minimum size requirement is under 250.102, okay? Because remember that previously, it can't be smaller than that. So let's go look at 250.102C1. All right, so we're over here. Hopefully this is all showing up for you. Looks like it is, all right? So under here, we'll be looking at this table. See, this table also has grounded conductor on it. And by the way, you get referenced here in 250.24D, so it's going to reference you here anyway. And so when we come down and look at this, we say, okay, what was the size of our hot conductors? Well, they were 2 copper, remember? Because we used 310.12A, right? There was 2 copper. So we come down here and we look and say, well, 2 copper, 2 and smaller, it would have to be at least an 8. Well, for us, it's a 4. So it's greater. So we met the minimums of this table. Okay. So we've met the minimums. So our conductor, our 4 gauge, was greater than the table. So we're okay. Okay. We can't be any smaller than that table. Okay. But we've done it. We met it. And so we don't have to worry about this table. Okay. So we've already sized that. So there you go. So that is our 4. Now, when it comes to the grounding electrode conductor, again, we don't know what type of electrode it is. Since we don't know what type of electrode it is, that means we're going to default to where? Table 250.66. That's our default. Okay. If it had been a rod, pipe, or plate, if it had been a concrete case electrode, if it had been a ground ring, then we could have looked at 250.66A, B, or C. But that is not what's given to us. We're just saying What is the size of the grounding electroconductor? That's it. So it's all going to go there. So where do we go? 250.66. So if we take you to 250.66 and we go here and we look at this table, and again, it's based on the largest ungrounded hot conductor or equivalent. And remember, we were using parallels when we were doing the service. We don't have that issue here. This is just one feeder going, so we use the largest ungrounded conductor. And notice that this is not plural. So you're just using one conductor here. So just use leg A or whatever you want to call it. So in that case, again, our sizes was 2 copper. So you come down here under 2, right here, and it's an 8, okay? So the minimum size looks like it would be an 8 for this scenario, okay? When it comes to a 2, right? So let's see here. And this is where, okay, this is good. This is the one, this is where I put the 1 for you to be aware of, okay? This is where I put the 1 to be aware of. Let's go back real quick and I'll show you, see if you pick up on it. See if you pick up on it. Anybody pick up on it? And then I'll show you something else, why it's what it is, okay? All right, so you see where this says 6, right? Y'all with me? See that? And you looked at 250.66 says the minimum size, it has to be at least an 8, right? All right, so read all of this here. So use line 18 to find the grounding electroconductor in table 250.66. Okay, so we used 18, which was a 2, right? Stay with me. Stay with me. All right? That type, so it's 6 here, right? Now, one of the things to remember here is we're saying, okay, it can't, so what size would it would be if it was a 125 amp overcurrent device and it was an equipment grounding conductor? What size would it be? So let's go back to the code real quick. And the reason I didn't let y'all dwell on that for a second, like I usually do my do, because I'm running out of time. So I'm trying to get to where I need to be. All right, so let's go look at 250.122 real quick. And I'll show you right here. And let's get to the table right here. Okay. And I'm going to show you why it needs to be a 6. Notice when you get here to this table, and I'm assuming this table is showing up, okay, 250.122. Notice that when you're over 100, anything over 100, your equipment grounding conductor would be sized what? If it was a 125 device, then it would be a 6, right? I'm going to see if anybody picked up on this, and then I'm going to go back and spend one little second on this. Why do you think this is a 6? I did this to see if anybody would answer this, but I didn't hear anybody say anything. So now I'm going to take the time to show you why I went here. You ready? I didn't mean to try to trick you, but guess what? It's a feeder, dude. Is that a grounding electrode conductor? Did I need to go to 250.66? No, it's a feeder. That's an equipment grounding conductor. That is why it's a 6 gauge, okay? So the reason I did that is for those that are using this form, this is a multi-use form. Be very careful. Very careful. Now, not even about durability. It is, in a feeder, it's not a grounding electrode conductor. So I think it's so important for us to sometimes do that so that we can look at it and go, because I was waiting for somebody to go, Paul, it's not a GEC. Why are you at 250.66? But I didn't, and it could be the delay. But in this scenario, it's not a grounding electroconductor. It's an equipment grounding conductor, right? And that is why you go to 250.122. Okay. All right? Okay. Just wanted to, I like to throw those little things in there and use it for a little lesson because, again, it can get confusing because we went to 250.66, we went to 250.102. grounded conductor, and that's when you saw me highlight grounded conductor and all this kind of other stuff and do everything. And everything is to kind of, I went around it, and then when I got to the GEC, it wasn't really a GEC, it's an EGC, and I wanted to see if anybody threw that in the comments, but you didn't. That's okay, you ain't got to. All right, so now we're going to get to this question. I got to get to this question, and we're still going to have giveaways. So I am coffee hour, as always, is turning into coffee hour and a half. I've lost half of my lunch today, but that's okay. Paul's fat anyway, doesn't need lunch. So let's look at these questions so I can answer these questions for you. Okay, this is a real world question that came in. First question says, good morning, Paul. Well, it says, well, I got into several more disagreements with my new boss yesterday with regards to sub panels we are installing on this job. In a single family dwelling unit that will have a new 300 amp underground service coming to it, we are using the 2017 code here in blah, 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 and I won't say where it's at. Okay, so they're still on the 2017 code, wherever that may be, you know, so let's just say, who knows where it may be. Okay, now it says, the first disagreement that he had with him was that the original plans, we had two 150 amp main breaker panels within the garage directly behind the meter pan. Okay, so back-to-back installation. Either back-to-back on either side of the wall. Okay, and he says he now wants me to install the two 150 amp panels on a perpendicular interior garage partition wall that is around 6 to 7 feet away from the meter pan. Okay, all right. Okay, so what he's doing, instead of back-to-back, you've got a wall that's perpendicular, right? And they want to come through the wall and then run raceways or cable, whatever, down the wall and put his panels further into the structure, okay, further in. So you have more service conductors coming in, okay? That's what he wants to do, rather than back-to-back. Okay, so that's what his boss wants to do. Okay, now he says it would still get passed by the inspector as we are pretty close to the 5-foot rule. So we would not need exterior disconnects. Okay, so first of all, they're in the 2017. They don't have the requirement for the emergency disconnect. Okay, and secondly, we have to look at this 5-foot rule because this does not appear in the National Electrical Code. Right? This is nowhere. Now, in all fairness, the jurisdiction that they are in may have an amendment or may have an adoption or may have something that allows them to allow service conductors to come further into the dwelling. Because the National Electrical Code is pretty clear in 230.70A1. It's outside or the nearest point of entry these conductors have to terminate. Now, that back-to-back application, that would have complied because the moment those service conductors penetrated into the building, they're going right to the overcurrent device, done. That is the nearest point of entry, the moment that it came right in, right? And typically, if you want to run conductors further into a building, you would have a disconnect outside so that it changes over to a feeder, and then the feeder is protected, and you can run that anywhere you want through the building, okay? That's typically what happens, okay? So in this scenario, that 5-foot rule may be an amendment to their local rules. So you have to give him some benefit of the doubt when it comes to that. It may be an amendment. However, in the National Electrical Code, and again, I'm going to assume that y'all can see this because I cannot, I'm going to go to 230.70 and show you what the rule is. Okay. All right, here's 230.70, right? And this falls under service equipment, the disconnecting means, okay? And it just may also be overcurrent protection as well, but it's definitely the disconnecting means to shut the power off, okay? So it says the disconnecting means shall be provided to disconnect all ungrounded conductors in a building or other structure from the service conductors. Have to be able to kill it, cut it off. All right, where's the location? Well, the service disconnecting means shall be installed in accordance with 230.70A1, A2, and A3. Well, here's the one we're going to deal with right here, okay? Readily accessible location means that we know what the readily accessible means, right? We have a definition of readily accessible. We know what that means. So in our case, it says the service disconnecting means shall be installed at a readily accessible, a defined term in Article 100, location either outside of the building or structure or inside nearest the point of entry of the service conductors. So the nearest point of entry to me would be the moment that it penetrates into the building, because those are unprotected conductors at this point entering into the building. Now, I can tell you that some jurisdictions, like in Virginia, some jurisdictions, they use a tongue-in-cheek rule, means the AHJ, it's not formal. So the problem with that is you could have 3 different inspectors looking at it differently, so they need to be on the same page. But they might let you go up to 3 feet. They might let you go up to 2 feet. Another allowance where they may let you go a little more than normal is if where you were going to go, which would have been back to back, would have not been readily accessible, but you could have gone just a little bit this way or a little bit this way, and they are willing to work with you and say, okay, it's such a small amount, that type of thing. Then they're willing, they might be willing to work with you. But the pure letter of the code says outside or nearest point of entry, not entry and then run along the wall. You get me? And even penetrating in the building is within the building. Okay, so we're able to limit the amount. And again, for most parts, we use the wording literally, okay, nearest point of entry, because it's hard for us to do anything inside the wall. Now, where does this become an issue? I have seen people where they come in down low in a meter and they bring the feeder, and they bring the conductors in service up through the wall and then pop it out at another floor. No, that is in the building, okay? So you're not at the nearest point of entry, okay? Where in your case, where you ran it through the block wall, you really are at the nearest point of entry the moment that pokes through, okay? Okay. Now, Terrence says just do what the foreman wants. That's his responsibility. You know what, Terrence? It may or may not be, because I was a legal expert on an issue that happened over a swimming pool application where the owner told the electrician that works for him not to put GFCIs in, and the electrician didn't install GFCIs, and somebody got killed. And it went to a lawsuit. And guess who both got pulled into court? Guess who both got sued? Guess who both lost their license? The electrician that did the work and his supervisor or the owner. They both did. Because as an electrician, it is one of the things that when you sign off to become an electrician, it is your responsibility to understand what is right and what is wrong. Okay? Now, there's a lot of times where we might get somebody wants something where you're asking me to do something wrong. Now, I get it, what you're saying, Terrence. The electrician can say, look, I was pressured into it. And hopefully it's just a simple failure thing. But look, let me tell you what happens. I'm a legal expert. Now that this gentleman has it out there, he has mentioned it to people. He has made it known that he knows there's an issue. If he installs it based on what the boss wants, and I get the dynamics of working for somebody and we have to follow what they want. But that doesn't mean that I can do something that may be dangerous or hazardous just because somebody tells me to do it. It does not remove my liability, okay? If I bully somebody online and they hurt themselves, they're coming after me, all right? So again, we are all going to be held accountable, that type of thing. So I get it. And there's that other dynamic where people say, look, I don't want to get fired. You know what I'm saying? It is the same thing, because that code violation can turn into a death, okay? It is the same thing. So that installation with the GFCI worked fine until somebody got electrocuted. It was a code violation that the inspectors they actually didn't see it. It was done. It was a code violation. It was later that somebody got hurt. So it is the same type of scenario. But I can't tell people what to do. And there may be an amendment in your area. Okay. And you know what? You have to judge the level of what you're willing to accept and do. And that's up to everybody's own. Don't let me be the person that tells you to, you do what you got to do. But at the end of the day, just remember that unless that 5-foot rule is in place or unless something in your jurisdiction allows it. Now, if the inspector passes it, then you know what? Once you get that piece of paper, that's different, because if the inspector passes it, then you know what? People think that the inspectors have total immunity. Well, they don't, unless they know it was a code violation and there was no local amendment and they accepted it, and then something happens, then you might be able to push back and say, hey, the inspector said it was okay. But if I were to get you on the stand in court and they hired somebody like me to cross-examine or do that, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say, did you know it was a code violation? And if you say yes, then you're complicit in it, that type of thing. So just be careful. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, Terrence. I'm not saying everybody's got to do what they got to do. I'm just trying to give you all the rules, okay? Does that make sense? So I answered that one, But again, they may have an amendment in your state. Can't feed the hog that one, because that's just black and white. It's outside nearest point of entry. The hog doesn't get into hypotheticals. It doesn't care. Okay, it's just going to pull back what the code is, and it should say it's nearest point of entry. Okay, if it's running in and running 5 feet, that is not the nearest point of entry. You know what I'm saying? All right. So anyway, but again, you may have an amendment in your area. Okay, back to we got more. So that's your first one. Oh, and how would you solve this? If you do want to go 5 feet, then you have to put disconnects outside. Or put the disconnects, the hog always cares. Or you put it on the nearest point of entry, okay? That type of thing. Or you let it roll and you go, and maybe they have a 5-foot rule. If he mentions a 5-foot rule and the inspectors have passed it, he's the boss. So you know what? All you can look at the court is say, you know what? My boss said it was part of the 5-foot rule. That's a lot better than your boss telling you to do it and you just do it. Now you know the boss said, oh, this falls under the 5-foot rule, so you can don't go looking it up now. You can go into court and look straight into it and take a lie detector test and say, well, my boss said it was 5-foot rule, okay? So, all right, next question. All right, so the second disagreement the gentleman had on the job this is his new boss, so this is not a good way to start a relationship with your boss, okay? So my second disagreement was that he dropped off a 4-3 NM cable for me to run the 200 amp sub panels we have provisioned. Okay, so you've got some sub panels installed in this dwelling. Okay, you got 2 sub panels, 100 amp sub panels. Okay, one on the 2nd floor and one on the 3rd floor. Okay, sounds like a fairly decent size, and it sounds like you're doing what I would do when it comes to putting sub panels or remote distribution panels in order to limit the home runs and to make things a little more accessible and a voltage drop and all. It sounds like you're doing that. It sounds like a fairly decent sized house. Okay. So, I mean, I'm all for remote distribution panels. Okay. He says, when I said that it is not properly sized, he said it would be fine and that I did not know what I was talking about. I referenced table 31016 in the 2023, although you're not on the 2023, but doesn't matter because the ampacity is the same. It didn't change, I don't believe. And I said that a 4 gauge was only good for 70 amperes. Now, he said I was looking at the wrong column and that the 6-degree column was only for UF. That is not true, because that just gives you insulation types and cable types that are given under the table, but we have other rules that we have to follow. And he went on to say, I replied that he was wrong, that in 334.80 is where it states the 6-degree column must be used for NM cable. Now, in 334.80, we can use the 90-degree column to do adjustment and corrections as long as the final calculated ampacity does not exceed the value that's given to us in that 60-degree column, okay? So for layman's terms, we can't ever exceed the 60. We can adjust and correct, but when it comes to non-metallic sheath cable, we can't exceed the 60. Okay, it just is what it is. All right, so you are absolutely right. He's wrong. Okay, so and let me show you why this guy is doing this. If you go look at 31016 real quickly, and yes, I know I'm going over. It is Friday. I'm keeping you longer than normal. I get it. I'm sorry. He sees this right here. And that's why he says that. And that's just a misconception. Okay? So that is just one of those things. It's just a misconception in it. Okay? Because T-dub is an individual conductor. UF is a cable assembly, but is a misconception here because the rules that we're following, all right, is where? The rules that we're going to be following for this installation is going to be where it is modified based on the rules that are for that wiring method, which is right here. Okay. So right here, it says the ampacity of NM and NMC, which nobody makes really. NMC, you would use UF instead of NMC. Nobody makes NMC for corrosive locations. That's why you would use UFB for this. But anyway, it says for type NM, it says shall be determined in accordance with 310.14. It says the ampacity shall not exceed that of the 60-degree rated conductor. Now, it says the 90 shall be permitted to be used for adjustment and corrective purposes, provided that the final calculated ampacity, after we do the math, does not exceed that of the 60. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the only reason that we're doing the adjustment and corrections from the 90 is to make sure that I still have a conductor that's good enough for the load. I still have to make sure I have good enough for the load. Okay? But at the end of the day, I still can't exceed the 60 at any point when it comes to non-metallic sheath cable. Okay? So that's given us a 334.80. So you're absolutely right. Your boss is incorrect. Okay? All right? So we're back to that. So you're absolutely correct in that scenario. So not going to be sized properly for that application. Right? Also, you're right. These panels do not handle 100% of the loads for that dwelling. So it cannot use 310.12 in the 83% rule. Absolutely right for that scenario. Okay. Now, your third disagreement. Wow, you're having a trifecta day with your boss. Okay. So the third disagreement of the day is yesterday, it says, was where he had a new, very green, young kid drilling 7/8 of an inch holes to run some home runs, and had him pulling two 12-2s and a 14-3 in a single hole set of holes, and then also two 14-2s and a 14-3 in another set of holes across a 20-foot run of wall space. Okay, wall space. Okay. He said, I said to him that it is not good as it is bundling, being that there are more than 3 current conductors and it is longer than 24 inches. Okay. He said it was fine as it was open air along with some other choice words. So other choice words for me. Okay. So let me explain this one. So first of all, there is no such thing here as a free air for this scenario, okay? Now, is that wall going to be insulated? If it's going to be insulated, then you've got other rules that you have to follow in 334.80. And again, they're going to start to limit the ampacity on these conductors. So if you have 2 cables or more with current carrying conductors in them, then what you're going to have is an issue where the ampacity is going to have to be altered. Okay, that's the first one. So nothing was said about insulated walls. Charlie says if it fit, it works. So there's nothing in there about the insulated walls for the ampacity. Okay, now, if there was, then you got to follow the rules in 334.80 and you're going to have it. Okay, now, The other question in here is how many cables can I put through a hole? You can put as many as you want as long as it doesn't damage the cable. There's no rule in the code that says how many you can put through the hole. As long as, when you put it that hole, as long as you're at least an inch and a quarter from the edge of the hole to the edge of the framing member. If you're less than that, you have to use a nail plates or nail guards or whatnot. Other than that, there is no requirement for how many you can pull through the bored hole. You just can't damage the sheathing. So if you put in enough that causes damage to the sheathing, then an inspector might see that damage and then you'd have a problem because you can't damage the sheathing. But there's nothing in there that says it. Now, if you're going through a bored hole that's in a top plate that's going to have thermal insulation in it or some kind of like rock wool in it or something like that, now you still are back in 334.80 where through that penetration that has that thermal insulation in it, now you're going to have to make an adjustment to the ampacity of these conductors. So it's going to affect the ampacity of those. Now, in all of your cases right here, as long as you don't have more than 9 current carrying conductors running through any open, if there is thermal insulation in it, then even after adjustment and corrective purposes, you're going to be okay, right? Because you have no more than 9 current carrying conductors here, right? So here you've got 2 12s and a 14.3. So it looks like you've got, in this case, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 current carrying conductors because, again, we won't assume that neutral is current carrying because carrying the imbalanced load maybe, all right? That type of thing. I don't know, but we'll assume that. Only you know that. And then on this one, it's 2 14.2. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, okay? So here, current carrying conductors. Also, actually, you count the neutrals. So let's see how many we got here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the neutral may not be counted here or not because it's carrying the imbalanced load. But anyway, you don't have more than 9. And over here, you don't have more than 9. So even after adjustment and corrections, it's not going to affect the ampacity of your conductors and you'll be okay. Okay. And we talk about this in a video that I did called Non-Metallic Cable Basics. And that is available over on our Fast Tracks tube as well, where I break down the issues of non-metallic cable and thermal insulation and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's that one right there. Now, let me address this piece, this bundle piece. All right, so to do that, we have to go to the code. And it may or may not work. So let's see here. It looks like it's not working on my end, but it's working on your end. So I also want to address the issue that you're talking about because you make a reference in more than 3 current carrying conductors in the bundling. And this is important because some people may get this confused. So I'm going to go to 310.15 and we're going to go to C right here. Okay. Now I'm hoping y'all all see this. So let me make sure that it goes real quickly because it is delayed. Okay, it did go. All right, so here. Now read what this says. Follow along with me and remember what his question was or his response was. It says the ampacity of each conductor shall be reduced as shown in table 310.15C1 where the number of current carrying conductors in a raceway or cable exceed 3. Okay, so in your 14.2s and in your 14.3s, you do not have a cable where the current carrying conductors exceed 3. You with me? Inside the cable, you don't. Okay? So that one stops there. Then it says, or where single conductors or multi-conductor cables, which is what you've got in your NM cable, not installed in a raceway, it's not in a raceway, it's being running through framing members, are installed without maintaining spacing for a continuous length longer than 24. So this is where we get into the debates with people. Because if you're running it through a framing member, are they touching intimately, continuously for 24 inches or more? Are they touching? Probably not. They're probably touching, then it comes loose. It's probably touching, it comes loose. They're not completely touching, right? So you're not wrapping them together with tie wraps so they're all touching and all this kind of stuff. So it's real important to realize that in your statement, it may or may not be bundling, okay? It may or may not be bundling. But incidentally, even if it was bundling in this scenario, it's not going to be an issue for you, okay? Because you don't have more than 9 current conductors. Now, let me show you why that works out that way, just so I can show you, because again, we're over time any damn way. So I might as well, I'm over the time, so screw it. We might as well do it. All right, right here. So see when I get to 9, see how it's 70% multiplier for 9 current conductors. Okay, so let's just say I had enough conductors of 12 gauge that were 9, right? You get me? I just want to show you how this works, okay? And hopefully this shows up. Let me real quick, I got to wait and see if it shows up because nobody's telling me if it shows up. So I got to wait. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're going to show you what the 70% does. Okay, now remember we're making an adjustment or correction, right? So we get to use the 90. In non-metallic sheath cable, the insulated conductors inside of it are rated 90. And remember when we looked at 334.80, it said we could use the 90, right? Okay, so let's get what the ampacity would be. Okay, let's get what the ampacity would be for this 12. Let's just do 12 gauge, for example. All right, so it's 30 amps. That's under the 90, okay? Right here, under the 90. Ignore this stuff. That's what your boss is not doing, okay? He's not ignoring this stuff. Ignore this right now. We're looking under the 90 for this 12, okay? And you see that it's 30 amps, right? Okay. And you remember the modifier was 70%. Okay, let's come back to me. Okay, so let's do this. Got our trusty Casio. So I'm going to take that 30, because we're doing it from the 90. I'm going to multiply that by 0.70 or 70%, and that gives me 21 amps. 21 amps after we applied the adjustment or correction. Okay? In our case, we applied an adjustment because of the number of current conductors. 21 amps. A 12 gauge is good for what? 20 amps. If we follow the small conductor rules, right, in 210.4D, it says that a 12 gauge is protected by what? A 20 amp overcurrent device. So even after I applied the adjustment factors based on bundling, I still have a conductor that's good for 21 amps. Now, can I load it to 21 amps? No. Y'all know you can't load it to 21 amps because remember what we said in 334.80? Even after adjustment and corrections, I still can't exceed the value under the 60-degree column. And under the 60-degree column, that 12 gauge is good for what? 20 amps. But I have a conductor that, based on our calculation, is good for 21 amps. Well, that extra 1 amps is just makes you feel warm and fuzzy. It doesn't mean anything. It's still good for 20. So even after the bundling, if it was bundling, and I would argue that probably aren't touching continuously for 24 inches or more, then basically it's over 20, longer than 24. So not 24, it's got to be longer than 24. So in that scenario is, unless you're tie wrapping them together, you could go in there and just pull the cables apart a little bit, boom, done. And it's not an issue, okay? So again, that answers that question. So he's not right. There isn't free air, that type of thing, right? Now, where does all that go out the window? If that wall is insulated, then he has to do the calculation, and it still may be okay based on what we just did, because you can have up to 9 current conductors, and it's not going to make a difference for those, okay? But the moment you get over 9, that sucker drops to 50%, and you could end up being screwed on that scenario, okay? Does that make sense? I thought it was important to go over that, okay? So I went longer than normal, but I thought it was important to clarify those type of things. All right, the last one here, let me know, hell yeah, if you thought it was. If you're like, dude, Paul, you just go too long. I've got my head. Y'all guys believe that I actually get emails from people that say, you're too slow, you take too long, you explain it too deep, your videos go too long, you're too drawn out. You know what I tell those people? Go watch somebody else, because this is just how I am. This is just what I do. And I don't worry about time. I just don't. All right, so anyway, the last question here is I also know it will be another issue when we run the two EVSE circuits, as he said he is going to run them in 8.3 NM. All right, same rule. So again, 8 AW. So if you're running NM, you are still stuck in the 60-degree column. Nothing is going to change. Okay? Nothing's going to change. Also, you're absolutely right. Is the 125% for a continuous load is going to come in play. Why? Because of 625. 625 is going to tell us to treat this as a continuous load to these EVSEs. So you're absolutely right. It's the same scenario he's going to run into. All right. So my advice is he should use SE cable, then he can use the 75, get away from the 60 limitation, use MC cable, then he can get away from the limitation of the NM, or just bump the size of your NM up. But let me just say it this way to you who submitted this question. You're not being a pain in the ass, but you're going to have to realize how you have a conversation. And there's going to come a time when he's like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. Sometimes you just can't fix people that don't want to learn. And rather than drag you down, my advice is it might be you're not going to change him. So here's my advice. I've gotten a number of these from this individual so this guy, and he's not alone. I get this from other people. I tell people, if it drives you crazy, then start looking for another job, because life is too short to be miserable. And it doesn't mean you're wrong. And you have to start looking at it, I guess, and say, you know what? He's the boss. I'll do what he wants to do. I don't have a problem you being vocal, because you should. Because you need to make sure that if you had a conversation, let me tell you why. Because most states, a verbal conversation is an agreement, a discussion. So you are protecting yourself, actually, right? You're protecting yourself by bringing it up to him. Because if it were to go to court and it becomes deposition, now you've got me. And I am more than, I'm going to tell you all my family, y'all are all my family. If you had an issue like this, and I'll tell that individual out there, your family with me. I do a lot of stuff for people. I write a lot of letters that get in court. I will defend you. In other words, you know what? I will say, this guy shared it with me, but that's only going to work so much, because you needed to have that conversation with them so that when they go under deposition, if something happens, you can say with a clear conscience, I told my boss about it and he ignored it. Then, like we were talking with Terrence, it's going to be a fine line on whether or not they look at you and say, yeah, but you should have known better. Well, you can play the hardship card and say, dude, I got to feed my family. I'm just here working. He's the boss. And I questioned it, and he told me, you might be successful in that. Or you might get the other side, hire somebody like me who can be on the other side. It depends on who pays me the most. If I'm on the other side, I might get up there and say, Your Honor, he should have known better. He's a licensed electrician. He should have told his boss, and he should have refused to do it. Look, it doesn't matter who's right. It's who the jury believes. It's who the judge believes. And I am very persuasive with juries, and I'm very persuasive with judges. So it's all about how you present it. But I got your back, because you did talk to me about it. And as long as you had that conversation with him, y'all do not know how many letters I have written about different things to help people out. Okay, I do my best to try to help people. I can promise you I'm the only educator in the industry that probably does that. Because at the end of the day, I'm an electrician. That's what I do. I just love teaching you guys. That's it. All right, contest for those that hung around. Those have popped out of here. Y'all left. Sorry. We're going to spin the wheel and give some stuff away. I know we're running behind, but I've always got to give some stuff away. For this is advantage to all of you that are still here. Let's go. Mm, mm. All right, Mike Andre. All right, Mike. We're going to spin this wheel for you. Let's go. Caldry. Why did I say Condry? I'm sorry, Mike. My eyes ain't the best. I'm probably going blind because of my activities as a teen. All right, license plate. Beatbox Friday. Really, Paul? All right, so you're in the drawing for the license plates. It's a custom engraved license plate. So, Mike, you're in the drawing for one of those. So, congratulations for that. We'll see if you win that here in a couple weeks. Let's go. It's enough. That's all you get. You like it, Erie? I tell people. All right, David. I think the thing about that, Erie, is that I'm not here for the clicks. You know what I'm saying? So let's see what you get, David. I'm not here for the clicks. If somebody doesn't want to learn from me, piss off, go somewhere else. I'm not here to cater to them. I am not like any other educator. I can promise you that. I do not, even though people say, Paul, people buy your courses, people buy your stuff. Hey, David, you're in the drawing for the the Trade Hog drawing for a year's of access to the Trade Hog. All right, you're in that drawing. Cool. It's been a while since anybody got for that. So you're in the drawing for a year of basic Trade Hog. Awesome. I'd like to give more of those away. Incidentally, I'll just address this. Erie, I do this again because I never change the way I teach. People say I had somebody do a YouTube video and said, I spent 2 hours watching you, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, well, that's your loss, dude. You didn't have to stay for 2 damn hours. Piss off. Go somewhere else. I don't care. I don't care if people watch me or not. I'm teaching. And you either learn or you don't. I don't really care. And people say, well, aren't you selling courses? Aren't you worried about offending people? Well, if you're a first-time viewer, here's a tip for you. I am not politically correct, and I don't give a shit whether somebody watches me or not or likes my stuff. I don't care about people's opinions. I literally don't give a shit. I teach the code. I will teach anybody. Black, white, green, red, blue, small, short, ignorant, smart, intelligent, whack jobs. It doesn't matter. I teach everybody because I'm teaching the code. It's not personal. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Coffee's kicking in, baby. All right, Fast Track Shoe, there you go. Let's do it another one. Let's go. I am an equal opportunity offender, my wife says. Because I cut through all the BS and I just teach you what you need to know. Here. I don't want you to think I forgot this. Hold on for a second. I know it's late in here. I don't want him to think that I forgot this because I did not. Dominique, I'm sorry. I was so into the program that I did. You're at Fast Track. You passed your Texas Master's exam. The program works. You just have to put in the time. I do not want you to think that I missed that. I did not, my friend, okay? I did not miss it. I was just so focused, and I want you to know that I did see it, and you were amazing in the program, and I am so happy for you. It's where life begins, man. It's something about licensure. If you're not licensed out there, your goal should do it. It's internally. It's important. It feels good, that type of thing. All right, let's see here, Dominic. What are we giving you? Let's spin it and see. Let's give you something good. Okay, these are cool plates. Okay, so they're just engraved plates, but they're pretty cool. You can get them with master electrician, journeyman, whatever you want on them. So you're in the drawing for one of those things. So, also, I did have another question that came up this morning that I did answer for somebody. Somebody asked if in a pull calculation, if a conduit body or a conduit C, which is basically just a pulling L or a pulling C, if that had to meet the pull box requirements, if it had conductors in it that are insulated 4 gauge and larger, and the answer to that is yes, because typically those, it's not like an LB, right? It's designed for pulling. So yes, it still has to meet the rules of 314.28, which is if it's a straight, it has straight times 8. Still has to meet those dimensions. So usually you'll buy those C conduits or C conduit bodies. You'll buy those based on the length that you need in order to comply with 314.28A, which is the straight is 8, that type of thing. Now the LBs and the LRs and the LLs, all those have to comply with the rules in 314.28A2 for Ingalls and things like that, okay? Anyway, I answered that one this morning in another one of our Let's Ask Paul segments, okay? I'm running so far behind. Let's do another giveaway. Thank y'all guys for hanging in there. This is coffee multi-hour today, and it's a Friday. Terrence Grace. All right, Terrence, let's go on and spin that wheel and see what you get. You're in the drawing for the 2023 grounding and bonding course. Cool. All right. Good deal, Terrence. Okay, guys, I'm running so far over today. If you got any questions, please submit them to paulabernathy.com. They will be addressed in future episodes. I have gone well over 2 hours today. I am going to get in trouble today. So, folks, I appreciate all of you. Thanks for joining me. And hopefully you got in on the spin. And we will catch you on Monday. And on Monday, we will be starting our journey in the optional method. So you want to check it out because that's probably what you're going to be using for the most time when you're doing a calculation in the field is the optional method. And we get to see how that differs from the way we did the standard method. All right. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. And we'll catch you on another episode of Coffee Hour. Peace. Do this, okay, for all that hung around. I don't usually come back on after, you know what I'm saying? But there is no damn way that I can't give some love to people that do really good things. And Marlon, you passed both your business and technical exams there in Florida, okay? So again, I'll put that back up there. You're waiting for the board to approve your credentials next month. Congratulations. Again, I love to see people succeed. I love to see you succeed. And that's why I get up every day and still do what I do, because I love seeing you succeed. Congratulations. All right, folks, that's it. Just had to come back in here. Peace. Love y'all.